Hello everyone, and welcome back to this channel. I wanted to talk a little bit about an experience that I had brushing up into the world of this open relating. Before we get into the real meat of the story, I do think it's important to understand where I am located geographically in the world, which is a very small island in Southeast Asia, which is predominantly saturated with this kind of open relating ethos and lifestyle. Why I am here is because I took a job to come and teach yoga and to share the teachings of yoga and the practices of yoga, and to do that in a very clear and direct and contained way. And I found myself on this island where there is a ton of this neo-Tantric community, let's say. And of course, with anything like Tantra, just like yoga, the practices are deep and vast, and you're getting information from different lineages and different teachers and different masters and different people who have had their experiences. So there is really no black and white to any of this. Everything has a multitude of colors depending on where you're getting your information from. In the basic sense, when I think of Tantra, I think of pure Tantra as being something that is a bit more, for lack of a better term, magical in nature. It is an alchemical practice. One of my teachers, a Swami from India, he talked about the Tantrika or the Tantric from his village. There was like a bridge or a wall in the village that was falling down, and they needed this wall to stay intact. The Tantric went over and drew a sacred symbol, which we call a yantra, and he performed a ritual, which included mantras and which also includes mudras. And through that practice of sound and mind, and then activating the different energy field within his own being, which we all have the capacity to do, he was able to put this, again, a spell, for lack of a better term, onto this wall, and the wall has never fallen down. So this is the power of those elements coming together to then create this specific outcome. It doesn't involve any type of physical interaction with another human being. It's not about relating to another human being. If anything, it's about the relationship with the divine. With this other side of Tantra, we have the neo-Tantra. And neo-Tantra, in its basic essence, is interrelating with another human being, using your sexual energy or your sexual capacity to create an alchemized, elevated experience. So you have the Tantra that is more sort of pure and devotional and doesn't involve another human being in the scenario. And then you have the Tantra that is primarily a more sexual type of experience. Now, the positive side of what I've seen with some of the offerings that take place here on this island, coming from the world of open relating, is that there are a lot of lonely people in the world, right? You might be one of them. I have found myself in that space of loneliness often in my life. Not too often, but moments where I fall into a place where I feel really disconnected from humanity, and maybe I'm sheltering myself indoors and I'm not really going out, and I'm not practicing being in the art of socializing and connecting and opening myself in new ways, in ways that feel safe, in ways that feel wholesome. Maybe I'm not in that practice. And I've had those moments here on this island because I'm very far away from what I know. I'm very far away from the 20 years of investing in communities back home and my personal family, all of that. And there might be this connection that I have online, but if you're not getting human connection and human touch, eye contact, laughing together, crying together, you can go into quite a depressive state of consciousness. So I do believe that some of what is being offered here is very beneficial. And not all of it is neo-Tantric sexualized practices. A lot of it is about nonviolent communication, how to just be very open in the way that we relate to one another, how to relate authentically, meaning how to drop into the body and really trust what we're saying and be in the moment and feel that sense of confidence and connection as we are relating to another human being that we may have just met, or even somebody that we've had a much longer relationship with. So again, there are nuances to this ethos. However, there is a very strong energy field around sensuality and pleasure, and how to open the doors of this and these experiences that are created for people to come into to explore that. I do think it's a little bit questionable, some of these setups, because while I understand that there is a vetting process for who is coming into those spaces, again, a lot of this is about money, right? Even on the yogic side of things with the business of yoga, you don't get a lot of people turning potential clients away. Everyone is trying to get the business and get the clients to come in. So you might not be as clear in who that person is that's coming in to that situation. You're still trying to do your due diligence and make sure that everyone has the proper mental health and hygiene to come into those spaces. But it's pretty fast, the entryway in. And a lot of that entryway is really about making the payment, and then you can walk through the door. And if you have somebody that's very vulnerable or coming from a place of deep trauma, or coming from a vulnerable, depressed state because you haven't been connecting with anyone for some time, and now you're put into this situation that's very hyper sensualized and sexualized, obviously there's a lot of triggers that can happen. Now, again, I'm not an expert on those spaces. I'm purely speaking as somebody from the outside that is watching the show from afar, knowing that it's happening, as well as I've experienced many women who I've talked to that have had their boundaries crossed, and they let down their boundaries because they didn't want to be the person to have the boundary, because having the boundary, especially on this island, means that it translates to this type of person that is very limited in their consciousness, that is very limited in their capacity to do anything, to manifest, to heal, to hold space. A lot of people are coming to this island, one, with the ambition to just have a good time. Two, they're potentially coming here to transform something, to heal something, to learn. Three, they get put on this path of now wanting to step into being a spiritual entrepreneur, holding their own spaces, creating their own communities, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. There are so many people on the planet that could benefit from you becoming a wonderful teacher of whatever the thing is that you have been cultivating. And now you are going to share that with some humans that could benefit from those practices and those techniques. However, as we know, there's a lot of shadow in there, a lot of shadow. So I've experienced many women who've come to me to share how they allowed themselves to soften their boundaries, to involve themselves in either relationships that were asking for a more open relationship when that's not what they wanted, or putting themselves in these experiences where they're going to the tantric temple, they're going into the thing to expand again their capacity, and they come out feeling really raw and vulnerable and yucky, and it wasn't the thing that they wanted to do. And in some of the cases when they've entertained these partnerships where it has moved into a more physical experience, they have gotten STDs, pains in their womb region. It's taken them months to rebalance the pH of their yoni, because on the practical level, right, things are happening. And then on the more esoteric level, there's an energy field that you as a woman are allowing into your vessel, and it's going to take you some time to untangle that. It's going to take you some time to really remove that from your system. And if it wasn't a positive experience, it's going to stay with you, and you're going to have to work to really clear that out. That is the landscape in a nutshell of where I am. I met Michael when I first came here, and then I didn't see him for quite some time after that. So we weren't hard and fast friends. There wasn't a super deep connection right away. I knew that he was involved in this world of Tantra because the center that I worked at not only gave yoga teacher trainings, but it also did these Tantric trainings or Tantric experiences. And my understanding of this school in particular was that it was a very light type of experience, which that would mean instead of jumping right into, something more sexual and intimate, it would work at the level of just being able to sit across from someone and look at them and sit with them and be very present in the body of what I am feeling, what I'm sensing. And there may have been a little bit of touch involved, but it wasn't like a full-on taking our clothes off type of experience, a full-on orgy, or some of these other situations that I've heard of. So I had met Michael, we'd had a few interactions, and then I didn't see him for a period of time. And when we crossed paths again, there was this kind of spontaneous connection. So we went out to dinner one night, and I was not anticipating anything. I didn't even think of it like a date. And then he ended up hugging me at the end of the date. And then there was this like exchange of energy and this feeling. I was like, oh, wow, there was this like very spontaneous feeling there. Now, Michael is attractive, he's handsome, he's articulate, he's lived, he's in his early 50s. I'm interested in this type of man. Even though I know that he is coming from this tantric path, which is a bit of a red flag for me, he has these other qualities and nuances. Add in the connection that was felt, I'm curious. Okay, let's go on another date and see where this goes. And everything is very mature in this scenario, in the sense that there's a lot of basic respect and basic respective boundaries, and he's very clear about that. So I never feel pressured. I never feel a sense that anything is moving too quickly. There's so much communication that it's beautiful. In our communication, we start to open up around what it is that we are seeking from a relationship. And I'm the one that really puts it forward because I am trying to understand the world that he's coming from and how he works along the tantric path, because he has been studying this for over 20 years. He's been in the ethos of these environments that I am only seeing from the outside. So I'm asking him a lot of questions to better understand where it is that he's actually coming from and how he's using these practices in his day-to-day life. What's revealed to me is that at this moment in time, in his life in particular, he's kind of 1 foot in that world and 1 foot out of that world. He's getting a bit more interested in neurolinguistic, neuroscience. He's trying to break away a bit from the more esoteric kind of woo-woo type of atmosphere and put himself on a path of really wanting to heal trauma, because he had gone through an experience a few years prior where he really went into understanding his own trauma. So he's a little more fixated on this versus the whole tantric, interrelating, sexual type of environments that he had been in before. Nevertheless, this is where he was coming from versus where he wanted to position himself and move forward. When we get into the conversation around relationship and what is it that we're looking for, what is it that we want, my view of relationship has really been imprinted from the relationships back home, which are all very solid, monogamous, family-oriented individuals. And I've seen the power and the strength, as well as some of the challenges that have come through those partnerships, but ultimately the great success that two people can have when they feel in alignment on their path and in alignment through their heart, through their mind. So much can be created. So much magnetism can come through the relationship that just amplifies and benefits both beings, where both beings can really rise into their empowerment. And while they are a couple, they're also these very empowered individuals. And this is the type of relationship that I'm interested in. This is the type of relationship that I'm seeking as well. The world that I am invested in, it requires a very clean energy field. For me, going out and having a lot of different experiences can be very confusing for my energy. It can be very confusing for my emotions, for my spirit. It can be very distracting to the things that I want to create in this world and the things that I want to get done, the things that I want to get accomplished while I'm here on the planet. And while love and intimacy and sensuality and these types of things are all kind of part of the package of life, we come back to, well, what is it that is centric in your world? And my world is very creativity and spiritual centric type of mentality. It's not a sensual centric lifestyle. I'm not trying to build my life around my senses. From a yogic perspective, I'm trying to withdraw my senses. I'm trying to integrate them so that the energy can rise and I'm not pulled left, right, and center by my senses, which is what we see in that Aubrey Marcus podcast, that, you know, the world is in agreement that this man is really just being pulled by his lower frequencies. And we can see it very clearly. I am expressing that this is where I come from and this is what I value and this is ultimately what I want. He is saying that that's something that he has always wanted, but he's never experienced it. What he has experienced is a very open style of relationship. And I'm trying to understand, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that we are in a partnership and we are physically engaging with one another, and then you go out and you're able to have that same thing with someone else? And essentially that's what it is. For me, that was a very clear no. So we decide to go very slow on the physical level, which, lucky for us, both of us are quite mature, so we are able to hold that and contain that. And we have a good foundation for a friendship. We have a lot of connection outside of the world of sensuality and intimacy, and we like each other and we're attracted to each other. So it makes sense to continue to further deepen the friendship and deepen the connection and to just he's going to honor my boundaries around how fast I want to go. And what I've learned in my years on this planet is that it's better to just go slow. If you want something that's substantial, go slow when it comes to the path of intimacy. Make sure that you understand what you are getting involved in there. Make sure that you understand who it is that you're going to be entangled with, because the nature of sex is attachment. The nature of it is to really merge and to entangle, and you get all wrapped up in each other's energy. And even if, and this is why it is very challenging for women to be so free sexually, because we are taking on a lot of that energy. So even if it is a consensual one-time type of situation, there's still quite a bit of purification that we have to go through to really cleanse ourselves of that person's energy, of that person's frequency, even if it was a positive experience. So we decide that we will just go really slow, and we work on all of these other aspects of getting to know one another. This is where the plot really thickens for me in getting to know him. And again, it's very nuanced. Michael is a very sophisticated human being. There are many layers to his being. So this isn't like a black and white, this is the only thing that was happening to create this. But I think that it did contribute to what I was seeing, what I was feeling, what I was sensing. I am someone who is at a place in her life where I'm very clear about what it is that I'm working on, what it is that I want to create in this world. It is a very masculine energy. I want to create experiences. I want to do my practices. I'm doing the things that I'm receiving a lot of benefit from. So I keep it very consistent and I go into those spaces. And then I receive something from that process. I receive whatever it is, financial abundance, moving to some beautiful location in the world, great relationships. I'm excited about it. I'm confident. I'm focused. I'm directed. And I am engaging with someone who is on the opposite end of the spectrum. Someone who is feeling now a bit of ambivalence around this whole world of Tantra that they've been investing in for over 20 years. This is someone I thought was a bit more stabilized in their career. I would have expected them to be at 50 years old. And what was revealed to me was the opposite. It really stood out to me because I am, as a woman, as a feminine woman, I'm looking for a very stable masculine energy so that I can let go of my masculine and I can be soft and gentle and just kind of melt into the tree trunk of the divine masculine that is, holding his own energy field really well, very rooted into the earth, with a lot of flexibility in the limbs, a lot of flexibility in the leaves, but essentially a very strong trunk. And as we were getting closer, getting to know each other better, there was a very clear lack of roots in his being. Now, it doesn't mean that somebody can't have those roots. And what I would advocate is that if you are going to engage in that world because it's presented itself and maybe there are enough green lights where you want to kind of walk towards that, I would really look at that person and try to understand what it is that they are rooted into. As we moved forward in our friendship, I was personally doing work at the time around, a lot of manifestation type of meditations. The meditations where you are visualizing what it is that you want in life, and then you're bringing it into your physical body. So you're starting to embody that sensation. And I love these types of meditations. So I was working on this vision, right? Because at the time I was in this tiny little bungalow and I'm like, okay, I want to expand Like, what is the expansion? What does it look like for me to be in that expansion? And I'm feeling into it through the meditation. I'm anchoring it into my body. And what I'm feeling is this like flowering, this opening happening in my root chakra. And I can literally feel like the energy is just shifting. And it is a feeling that I'm getting into this really deep sliver of fear that is in my root, a really deep sliver of fear, a really deep sliver of scarcity, a really deep sliver of anxiety. And this is totally normal. We all have this, and we live in a world where there's so much war and division and chaos. It's there. It's in the ethos. It's in the environment of everyone's subconscious. And so therefore it is within us. No matter how confident we are, how we have been just on this power manifestation trip and we're living this high abundant life that you see with like these influencers online and everything is happy-go-lucky and perfect and we're so empowered. There's still that little sliver in each of us. It just isn't as predominant as it might be in certain people. So I was feeling into this in my own system. I was like, wow, what I really want is safety. What I really want is to feel rooted, to feel safe, to feel secure. So I started to go into this practice and this repetition of really dropping into it. Why I chose to do that is because I'm curious. If I do this every day for a period of time, what will be the benefit? So I put myself in this place of, okay, I'm going to do these meditations every morning and just go into that unlocking of the fear that is there and bringing my system, my nervous system, into a state of deep relaxation, deep confidence, deep trust, and allow for life to unfold. What I realized with Michael and in relating with Michael was that he would have a deep struggle around any type of commitment. In the smallest ways, there would be this trepidation around the different choices that he would make in his life. And even when he would make the choice, there would be a lot of backtracking in his mind, a lot of anxiety around, well, what is going to happen next? This type of thing. And we're talking about things like booking a house for 4 months down the road, and then worrying about where I will be in 4 to 6 months. And yes, okay, it's good to forecast, where am I going to be in 4 to 6 months? But he would live in the uncertainty and in the anxiety around that, where at the end of the day, you kind of have to learn to let that go, right? You make the decision, you're in it, and now you just have to get into the process and kind of figure it out as you go and feel into what it is that you want. And I like to use the what's the worst that can happen model, right? To kind of quell the fear and to quell the anxiety, like just what's the worst that can happen? Okay, it's not going to be that bad. There are solutions. So let me just remove the anxiety and move forward. Obviously, anxiety is nuanced. I'm not trying to diminish that or say that anyone can just turn that off or turn that down. But for the sake of this example and what I'm trying to get to here, this is what was moving through him, was this trepidation around making choices, around making decisions, around really rooting himself in a vision and taking that step forward. And when I was in a very deep meditation, I received this message, which was, if he were to commit to you, it would probably be one of the better ways that he could heal in his life. It would be so beneficial for him to just make that commitment and to have that sense of stability. Like he would learn so much from it. And I certainly didn't take that as an Aubrey Marcus, Isis God moment that he must commit to me and this is, the way it would go. But just that he's not used to committing. And so committing to a relationship would actually give him some type of learning, some type of resonance around committing to other aspects of life, committing to the apartment, committing to the career, committing to the workshop, committing to who he is as a teacher, committing to who he wants to be in the world of leadership. And this was also something that came up. He wanted to be seen, and he was very vulnerable in this. He wanted to be seen as a certain type of guru or a certain type of teacher, which I know is a red flag, but he was just using that word to express, not that he really wanted to be like a guru or could become a guru. He wanted students to look at him like he was a teacher. And I said, well, what are you practicing? Because in the world of yoga, if I'm going to teach something, if I'm going to teach you about mudras, I'm going to be practicing these mudras for a long time so that the energy and the technique and the technology can move through my system, and then I can transmit it to you. And when we're in that space, that's what it feels like. It feels like a transmission. Students trust me in the world of yoga teacher trainings and yogic practices because I am continually doing the work, and then it is just easier for me to translate that and to transmit that to a group of students, whether it's in real life or here online, because it's a lived practice. And that's what my teachers told me to do. They were like, if you're going to teach, you need to practice. That's what it is. And he had done different practices and done different techniques, but there wasn't really something that he was anchoring into in the world of Tantra. There wasn't like a daily practice or a daily sadhana, and then you go into your, teacher training and then you're teaching that to the students. So I was just like, what is it that you do? And I don't even know that he had a clear answer. I think he just ended up listening to me tell him what I just told you, which was you kind of need to practice it. That's how you elevate yourself as a teacher. That's why people come to somebody as a teacher, because you have the thing. But for him, it was more, right? It was like he missed something in there, which is a very interesting thing to miss. So what is it that they're doing in the world of Tantra to be able to transmit the experience? Again, I'm not in that world, but a lot of it is sexual. A lot of it is relating with another human being. It's not a tangible method necessarily, although I'm sure there are some repetition of techniques like breathing and eye gazing and presence, this sort of thing. He would also reference things that he had done, like from his yogic practices. He was very deep in a specific yogic lineage for a period of time, but then at a certain moment that ended and he moved into, this different world of Tantra. I don't know if the two of them were happening at the same time or if it was kind of an overlap, but essentially he kind of shifted out of the pure yogic practices and went in this direction of Tantra and this direction of poly type of relating. So it also illustrated for me that he was into something and then stopped and shifted to the next thing. And you could kind of see this pattern of certain things that he had done that had worked up to a certain point where he then shifted and got involved into something else. So there was this pattern that was moving through him. And I think that the world of Tantra also helped to perpetuate the non-committal, non-rooted type of behavior. This is somebody that had been coming to this island for 20 plus years, deeply involved in the ethos of this type of poly relating experience or open relating experience. There is this phrase that is often used here on the island, which is called Peter Pan syndrome, which is these men that are aging in life and they're not growing up. They are living out their Peter Pan lifestyle. because there is this ethos that continually perpetuates anyone who doesn't really want to grow up, anyone who doesn't really want to take responsibility or accountability in a relational aspect. And they can just fly and float around the island and go to these different temple nights, which the temple nights are essentially open levels of intimacy, not always penetration, but certainly very sensualized experiences, at least what the people are sharing online. It seems to be a lot of people in the same space having a lot of different orgasmic sounds moving through them. Everything is described as being very juicy and very intimate and very lush and being pushed to the boundaries of what they thought possible around their sensuality and how they could have that with so many people or experience that with one partner in a group of people, whatever it is. And so because there is so much of this, it doesn't, right? If something gets difficult in an actual relationship, if something gets challenging, it's very easy to just go over here and experience this thing. Why stay committed to this when you can have a lot of that, and you can be in this world with other women who are also exploring this open relating, and you can have multiple partners and you can have multiple experiences and multiple pleasures and all of these things. And then what does it really add up to 20 years in to this type of experience? What did it add up to? And what it presented to me as somebody who is lacking a sense of roots in themselves, not able to provide a sense of safety, not able to provide a sense of security, not only provide it, but really feel it and sense it within their own selves. They're not able to even provide it for their own selves. Here I am in this meditative process of unlocking all of these fears, of energetically healing my root and setting myself up to grow those roots and to become more secure and more rooted in my vision. And then there is Michael, who is just completely floating, flying anxiously around, experiencing things, enjoying life, having fun. All of that is fine. Doesn't need to be so serious and so rigid. Where I was getting to in the relationship and why I ultimately ended the relationship was because I didn't feel a sense of safety. I didn't feel a sense of security, and that had nothing to do with violence. There was none of that present at all. And it also didn't have to do with financials, because he provided when we would go out to dinner. There was no sense of stinginess there at all, or a feeling that I had to pay for things or that I needed to be the provider on that level. It purely came down to the energetics and the emotionality around the energetics. And this is what I said to him. I said, I don't feel safe. I ultimately don't feel safe, and I don't feel that we can move forward because I don't feel safe. I don't feel that there is that sense of security, and you don't have it within you. You're not going to be able to provide that for me. And that was a tough conversation to have, but because of the maturity level between the two of us, it was a beautiful conversation, and it was very empowering, I think, for the both of us. As disappointing as it might have been, he had also expressed that he was coming to a point where he was seeing the value in coming together in a more secure partnership type of way, that he was kind of on the precipice of really wanting to commit in the way that I had said I would prefer to be in a committed relationship. Unfortunately, I was not in the attraction at that point. There was already too much that had been revealed in this process where I didn't want to continue to make that investment. Now, when you are dating someone who is a little bit older, I'm a little bit older, maybe for some of the audience out there. So I am a woman who has been taking care of herself and building life. And yes, I'm in the masculine in that sense of I pay for my world, I work in this world. And so the last thing that I want to do in relationship is feel that I have to work double. What I want in relationship is I want to melt. I want to dissolve. I want to cry. I want to laugh. I want to just be able to let all of the boundaries and the guards down and just feel myself release into the tree trunk of the masculine, the deep roots of the masculine. And I want that consistently. I don't want that just in a one-night temple orgasmic experience. I want that in a deep and profound and conscious way. So to entertain awakening someone who is in their 50s, okay, maybe, yes, but it was a no for me. But it was just a no for me, you know, at that time in my life. Like, I need to continue to build. I need to continue to pay my rent and put food on the table and pay for all of the equipment that's needed for me to create this vision, to share who I am. So that's beyond my capacity. I want an equal. I want somebody who's going to be able to equal or more, right? So I can experience that. And I also want to be there for the masculine, right? It's not all the masculine doing everything. It's being the type of feminine that can uplift the masculine and also hold the masculine in their vulnerability and in their experiences. My takeaway from him having been invested in this world of Tantra and coming to this island for 20 plus years and really being in this type of community ethos and atmosphere was that it didn't give him roots. It didn't give him a sense of inner confidence. It didn't give him the fortitude to really make something significant of his experience. And this was also very triggering for him to come into an energy field coming from a woman, the feminine, who is creating those things, who is deeply committed to her practices and seeing the power of manifestation play out and moving through life in that way. So it kind of woke him up to what it was that he was lacking, which is a good thing. I think it actually was a huge pivot for him in his personal life. And I think he took the reins of his life a bit more seriously and started to invest and build in the way and trust himself and that he could build this. So that takeaway is profound. I feel that our relationship in the moment, because it was a short moment, I think that it was just really powerful learning for both of us. And at the end of the day, if you can have that in your relational experience, that is a huge benefit and a huge takeaway. For women, I would say the takeaway is to go slow. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I went slow in that relationship. And I will say, I was excited about the sexual potential of being with someone who had these tantric skills, that had been with other women and truly learned in a very open way how to pleasure them and how to hold his orgasm and how to move in a much more sensual manner and an honoring of the divine goddess. Yes, I was super excited about potentially having the best sex ever. However, I'm so grateful that I went slow. I'm grateful that I went slow because, as I said, the nature of sex is attachment, entanglement, deep merging of your physical body, of your energy, of your emotion, of your psyche. And being able to recognize that this was a no, that I didn't actually feel safe in the constellation. I didn't actually feel safe in the dynamic. It was so much easier for us to detangle and to move on. And that is huge. detangle, reorient, pivot, and move on in a very respectful manner. There wasn't some deep play of emotional torment and emotional games and this whole thing that happens or can happen when you engage at that level when it's too rushed. For men, I would say look to your roots and look to the men in your life that are role models of rooted men. You have roots in the ground, you have a strong trunk that isn't just your physical abs and your muscles. You have the trunk of your investments and the things that you have been committing to. And look to the role models of great relationships. No relationship is easy. All relationships need a lot of support and work. For me, I look to those relationships where I see those individual beings coming together to create this more empowered experience, to create some of them families, some of them, they don't have children, but they have these incredible businesses and this incredible lifestyle that they enjoy together, which is just beautiful and magical. And then you have those that have children coming into this world. And I do want to make a bold statement here, which is, you can prove me wrong, but it's only coming from what I have been exposed to and what I see. So feel free to prove me wrong, but I have a very strong feeling, a very strong hunch that monogamous men make better fathers. And we need better fathers in this world. And Father's Day is coming up. So happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there. But the dads, and I would imagine that for the moms, the monogamous women make better mothers because there is that support and there's that ethos and there's that sense of safety and that sense of security, even in the moments where you don't know how you're going to pay for certain things and you're overwhelmed by the finances of taking your children to the dentist and like very basic things that are overwhelming in these economic times. You have that sense of safety and security in the relationship, which then expands into the environment, that expands into the children that are the next generation of beings that are going to be caring for us as we age, that are going to be making these decisions on the planet. And I will say that I have healed from being exposed to these really positive family environments. I've had my own personal healing because of where I came from as a child, the type of pain and tragedy that I went through as a child when my parents were divorcing, and we can get into that in a whole other commentary. But I have been able to heal through the divine love and union of other couples making that commitment to one another and being exposed to their process and being able to sit in the environment that they have created and to feel love and to feel held and to feel a sense of family and connection. It has helped to heal those deep wounds that I suffered as a child when I went through these layers of pain and suffering as my family was pulled apart through divorce. And, no shame in that, like relationships fall apart. But as a child, it just feels like it's your fault, that all of that is happening. And it takes a lot to repair that. And we'll talk about healing in another video because this one's probably getting a little bit long. So we'll go into that. So that is my story. That is my brush with the world of open relating. It started as a clear no. It ended as a clear no. I was very open-minded. I went very slow in the process. I'm grateful that I went slow. I'm grateful that I also paired with someone that was very mature in their capacity to communicate, that never pressured me, that never shamed me for going slow, that was always very respectful on all levels. Even when we closed the relationship, there were still some moments of closure that played out kind of after the fact. And it has just been so conscious. And I am grateful for that in the least. So if you do find yourself involved with anyone, male, female, in that arrangement, I just wish for you that you can have that level of communication and that you can really steer yourself without feeling like you need to get into something too quickly. Like some of the women that I referenced earlier, where they had let down their boundaries a little bit too soon, went through these experiences, got kind of whipped out, and, you know, ended up in a lot of pain that they had to then process. And that takes a lot of time to integrate and move through that. So this is my little brush, my little story for the day. Thank you so much for, again, supporting this channel, supporting my voice. I welcome your comments, and have a beautiful and blessed day.